it comes back to these farms that are producing this illegal milk, the certifiers that certify them, and the National Organic Program that allows it to happen. When I was on the National Organic Standard Board, Aurora was investigated thoroughly, and the NOP at that time found 14 willful violations of the national rule. And you only need one to lose your certification. And because it was such a big deal, they were such a powerful entity, everyone in the National Organic Program and actually the USDA had to sign off on this, that they were going to shut them down. It went all the way up to Secretary Johans at that time. But before they could actually take those actions, the politicians in Colorado and Texas and wherever found out about it and prevented the NOP from doing so. They got paid off by Aurora, and how can I make that statement? Well, because when I was on the NOSB, I earned the confidence of probably 3 of the people in the National Organic Program, and they confided in me a lot of information without knowing that the other 2 were doing the same, and they were always completely honest. They verified each other without even realizing it. So I know that and more than one person, more than one NLP person, staff member told me that.
Yeah.
So I know it happened. You know, I know they were ready to shut down Aurora, but got stopped by the politicians. And then the same thing's going on today.
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast. I'm Lindley Dixon, co-director of the Real Organic Project. We're a grassroots, farmer-led movement with an add-on organic food label to distinguish soil-grown crops and pasture-raised livestock under the organic seal. You just heard from organic dairy farmer and former National Organic Standards Board member Kevin Engelbert of Engelbert Farms in Nichols, New York. That may have been the very first certified organic dairy in the United States back in 1984. Kevin helps us better understand why organic dairy farms have been struggling and receiving a lower pay price for their milk, in spite of the increased demand for organic milk. This is an important conversation as family-scale organic dairies across the country continue to go under. So let's get back to the conversation with Dave Chapman and Kevin Engelbert.
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast, and I'm talking today with Kevin Engelbert. I've known Kevin for quite a while on the phone and via emails, but the first time we actually got to meet face to face. So Kevin is a pioneering organic farmer down here in New York, and also served a 5-year term on the National Organic Standards Board, and also one of the pioneer farms of the Real Organic Project. So Kevin, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Tell us a little bit about your farm. I know where we're going to get into, but let's just start with about what you're doing, how you got started.
How we got started? Okay, well, a Reader's Digest version, Dave. I got out of college in '79. Went to a liberal arts school because everybody told me you don't want to be a farmer. But after being there a couple days, I realized that I did. But I stuck it out, got a degree in economics with a minor in mathematics. And by that time, which was the spring of '79, we were struggling on our farm, trying to keep animals alive and trying to grow crops. And we had to purchase 20 bred heifers that summer to maintain cow numbers. And I thought it was a pretty big deal for me to be 22 years old and go to the Federal Land Bank or Farm Credit and say I need to borrow 20 grand to buy some heifers. I'm going to take over the farm. And they said, no problem, let us know if you need more. And we were at a family picnic that August after this had all transpired, and I walked up to my grandmother and told her what I'd just done. Had my chest out a little bit, thinking I was pretty hot stuff to be able to do that at such a young age, and she, expecting a pat on the back, and she stuck her lower lip out and looked at me and said, well, all I know is when your grandfather and I were running this farm, we had bred heifers to sell every year. And that was my aha moment. And I started thinking about it and started looking at our books, because I had never really paid any attention to any of that growing up. I was just happy-go-lucky, loved to work on the farm, then went away to college, and we were spending $25,000 a year then on fertilizers and chemicals and pesticides and herbicides and all of that. Then we were still spending $1,000 a month on vet bills, trying to keep our cows alive, trying to get them bred back, trying to keep them healthy, and we were failing at both places. We couldn't grow crops, we couldn't keep cows alive, and I realized then that there had to be a connection between the use of all these artificial or chemical inputs and our cows not being healthy. So we quit cold turkey. We tried that spring of 1980 to get our alfalfa started with a nurse crop rather than using Eptam, I believe it was at the time, and had a very successful stand for a change. And in 81 we went cold turkey and stopped using everything. And that was how we got our start. And it took about 7 years before I realized we were onto something. And we got certified in 84 because we tried to market our own milk, put it in a small processing plant. But with our debt load at the time, no bank would they just laughed at us and said, "This is just a fad. We're not going to lend you any money to do that. You're just going to go under if we do." But we knew we were right. We knew that this was the right way to go, because by 87, instead of having a vet on our farm every week to try to keep cows bred back and get them to clean after they've had calves and treat their mastitis with concoctions that probably weren't legal, and we got to the point where instead of coming every week, they were coming every other week, and by 87 they were on a as needed basis. So we knew we were on the right track. Plus our crops started being able to grow crops without having velvet leaf taller than the corn, and without having nut sedge take over the alfalfa fields, and sold all of our spraying equipment and haven't looked back. It took us 20 years before we finally got a market for organic milk. We like to think we transitioned for 20 years. But we finally got a market with Organic Valley when they moved east, and we've been with them ever since. And now today, my wife Lisa has started a retail store, and we divert a small percentage of our milk to cheese, and we also sell meat and poultry and pork, plus a lot of other local products from local farmers at our store. And 2 of our 3 sons have come back to the farm and have taken over now. So I'm just an advice giver and an occasional equipment operator, and I help with the bookwork, some of the bookwork. We have a small organic grain business that we deliver to a couple farms now.
Right. What's the path for organic dairy farm these days? Are things getting better or worse?
Oh, things are definitely far worse.
Worse than when? When were things better?
Oh, just not that many years ago. I think it was in 2016 or 17 that my son, Organic Valley, was clamoring for milk. So my sons doubled the herd, built a barn, put in free stalls, went to, bought a self-propelled chopper, and took on a huge amount of debt. Went from 120 to basically 250 cows now we're milking. We crowd 300 at times, but right now we're only milking about 200. We're just gearing up for fall and winter production. But the price has dropped considerably. We're down $10 a hundred from what it was 5 years ago, and it's a struggle now to make ends meet. We took on all that. My sons took on all that debt, and it's got to be serviced. And the other issue is we diversified with the farm store, and we diversified with selling organic grain. We bought a grinder mixer and a blower truck. And at one time we had 12 to 15 local organic dairies that we were delivering grain to. And we're down to 2 now, because a combination of 2 things. The illegal grain that has come into the country has lowered the price of it to the point we can't compete with it. And also, of those 15 dairies, 2 went to another supplier, and then the others have all sold out. Well, wait, I take that back. All but one. One went to a grass-fed. As far as I know, they're still doing that. But the others have all, with the price of milk dropping and getting below the cost of production, they sold their dairy and they're not milking anymore. They had family members that were going to take over, and then decided that we're headed the same place that conventional milk is, with a flood of the market, and it's just not working for a lot of dairies.
Yeah. So those organic dairy farms no longer exist. Yeah.
No, they don't. Well, the barns and but they're empty. They're
empty.
not being cows milked in them now.
Yeah.
So now, on a slightly, or not a slight, but a upbeat note, we've had 2 Amish families from Ohio buy 2 of those dairies, and they're milking 30 or 40 cows there, but they're grass fed. They're not buying any grain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Are they organic?
yes, they're organic.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
So in that period since last 6 years,
Yeah.
the price of milk has dropped from being a price that you can make a living at.
Yes. Price that we could make a good living at.
Yeah.
We were around $40 a hundred.
Yeah.
And then, now it'd have to be more today because the price of everything has gone up so dramatically in the last few years. But now we're down around $30 a hundred, I think, and it's just not enough.
Yeah. Your cost of production is higher.
Higher.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Now we've tried to counterbalance that some by the grain that we were delivering to other farms, and we're now feeding a little bit more grain to our cows to utilize it in that respect, because before we were only feeding 8 to 10 pounds of high moisture ear corn per cow, and that was it. And now we're feeding 10 to 12 pounds of high moisture ear corn plus a dry grain mix that we would normally have been delivering to other cows. So we're pushing our cows a little harder to try to make more milk, because the price has dropped and you have to have a certain cash flow to keep going. So without the grain business, the only option was to even get bigger or get more milk out of the cows. So the boys are having the vet a little more often now. We're trimming feet that we went over 10 years in the late 90s, early 2000s. The only time we had a vet on our farm was to dehorn calves. We didn't have any issues with health, didn't have any feet that need to be trimmed, because they were always outside on pasture, and we fed very little grain. They're headed slightly back to where we were before we went organic.
Yeah.
Pushing it a little harder and starting to have some health issues, and it's very concerning about where we're headed with organic right now, with all the illegal milk that's on the market and the illegal grain that's coming into the country.
So you got hit by 2 of the 3 big challenges to organic, the milk and the grain.
Yeah.
So let's start with milk. Let's start with milk CAFOs. Explain to me, if you could, why milk is now, they're paying less than the cost of production for a New England dairy farmer. Is this problem isn't limited to New England?
No, it's not. It's not, and it's a sad thing. And as I've gotten to the age I'm at, I have a harder and harder time being politically correct. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I think, and it's because of all the illegal milk that's coming on the market from these factory farms that are not truly organic. They don't pasture their cows. They buy a lot of this illegal grain. They milk their cows 3 times a day and push them hard for production. And they're doing a huge disservice to people that think they're supporting small family farms by buying this organic milk, and by people that are having health issues and think they're buying a healthier product when it's not. One of the Washington papers, I don't know if it was the Times or the Post, a year or 2 ago, did a study on, they did a lot of sampling of organic and conventional milk, and they found no difference in their test samples between a milk from the store label brand, which is coming from Aurora, and conventional milk. Yeah, they'll put pictures out that they've got cows out on pasture, but it's probably cows that aren't healthy or had to be culled from the herd, or dry cows, or you can't milk thousands of cows in one place and pasture them. It's just impossible to do it. We've actually found out that when my boys, like I said, they were up crowding 300 pounds, and they've had to drop back to less than around 250 now, because it got to the point where they were having a hard time getting the cows to go out and graze when they got that big. Even with a 9,000 volt electric fence, the cows would just they would just break through a wire and come back to the barn with that many cows. The herd mentality, I guess, I don't know, but and they like the grain. They like, it's just cows are lazy. So it's been a struggle now, or the last few years, or right now, with everything the way it is, with prices going up and the price of milk down. And I don't fault Organic Valley. They're doing the best they can. They're caught between a hard place and a rock, just like we are. They've got to compete on the market shelf for price with this illegal milk that's below the true cost of actual organic production, and yet still make enough profit to stay in business and also pay farmers. And it's just a tough thing. And a lot of it, I think, they're also under the control of some of these huge operations a little bit too, because they don't own processing plants. They depend on all these other companies to process milk, and if they get too out of line, these companies will just say, sorry, we're not going to process your milk. So, all the organic Valley farmers wish that they had a very aggressive marketing campaign explaining exactly why Organic Valley milk is worth more and exposing these frauds for what they really are. But if they do that too hard, I'm afraid what the consequences would be, because they just don't have the independence that they need to be able to do it. They depend on these plants to process and bottle and everything, the milk. So it's a tough situation.
Yeah. So they're sort of hostage as well.
Yeah. And it comes back to these farms that are producing this illegal milk, the certifiers that certify them, and the National Organic Program that allows it to happen. When I was on the National Organic Standard Board, Aurora was investigated thoroughly, and the NOP at that time found 14 willful violations of the national rule. And you only need one to lose your certification. And because it was such a big deal, they were such a powerful entity, everyone in the National Organic Program, and actually the USDA, had to sign off on this, that they were going to shut them down. It went all the way up to Secretary Johans at that time. But before they could actually take those actions, the politicians in Colorado and Texas and wherever found out about it and prevented the NOP from doing so. They got paid off by Aurora. And how can I make that statement? Well, because when I was on the NOSB, I earned the confidence of probably 3 of the people in the National Organic Program. And they confided in me a lot of information without knowing that the other 2 were doing the same. And they were always completely honest. They verified each other without even realizing it. So I know that and more than one person, more than one NLP person, staff member told me that.
Yeah.
So I know it happened. I know they were ready to shut down Aurora, but got stopped by the politicians. And then the same thing's going on today. The NLP knows what's happening. They know what's wrong. They know that, when I was on the NLSP in 2008, we were promised the origin of livestock rule before my term was over in January 2011. They actually thought they were going to release it in 2008 or 2009. And we still haven't got it. And we're never going to get it because the politicians won't let it happen because they're being paid off. Like I said, I'm having a hard time pulling punches and being politically correct at this age, because I've had enough of it. I'm so frustrated. I was one of the people that was gung-ho for the U.S. government to get involved with certification, because back in the 80s and 90s, I just got so tired of these certifiers not recognizing each other and having different rules that didn't mesh, and one certifier would allow this and another would allow that. They wouldn't recognize each other. And I was so naive, I never realized how corrupt the government is. Doesn't matter which political party, they're all corrupt. They're all bought and paid for. And I had no idea just how serious that was. I thought organic would rise above that. and we would be able to have certification standards that meant something, that would be enforced, that would meet the, not just the letter of the law, but the ideals that we all held so dear as this movement grew. But that hasn't been the case. So it's been a very difficult thing to watch what's happened the last 40 years since we've been certified or been organic.
Yeah, for me too. So just for people, the NOP is the National Organic Program, which
right.
is a branch, a small, tiny little branch
of the USDA. Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't personally know the people that work there now. I think everybody else has moved on, but they were class people when I was there. Every one of them, even the ones that I disagreed with, because they were just doing what they were told. I didn't realize it at the time. I couldn't understand why the head of the NOP at the time did what she did. But then I eventually came to realize why, because she had to. It's either that or lose their job, and they're vested in it. That's their careers, and they'd lose their retirement and everything else.
Yeah.
And so it's very frustrating now to realize all that. And I'm glad I served, but if I knew then what I know now, I'm not sure that I would, because it's been, the NOP ignores the NOSB. They tried to take away the NOSB's power. They tried to do away with the Policy and Procedures Manual. Miles McAvoy actually chaired one of the NOSB meetings. They've reversed the sunset policy, so now you've got to have 2/3 of a vote to remove a substance rather than 2/3 of a vote to keep it on. And they've packed the NOSB with enough corporate shills that the true organic people don't have much of a chance. So I don't have anything much I read about it, but I don't get involved in that much anymore, because until something changes, I don't see much worth in being involved in it. And it comes back, in my opinion, it comes back to morals. For example, just because it's the most recent, Danone or Horizon cutting out these 89 farms, the people in that corporation, they know the consequences of what's going to happen to these communities and these farms, but they don't care. The same with the people that started Aurora or manage it or run Horizon and have all these illegal CAFO dairies. They know they're not following the intent or even the rule of the law. They don't care. The people that have started these hydroponic operations, they know that soil has to be part of organic. That's the basis of that whole type of agriculture, but they don't care. So I don't like to hear people say that capitalism is the problem. It's not. If we didn't have capitalism, we'd be trying to figure out why so many people are starving and what to do about it. Capitalism has allowed this country to feed itself and be the food supply for the world. But you can't legislate morals. That's the problem. You've got to regulate it. And if people are allowed to break the regulations or the laws, and again, I don't know how they look in themselves in the mirror. They apparently don't believe in a higher being. They don't believe they're going to have a judgment day. All that matters to them is power and money. And it's all of them. The certifiers, the operations, the politicians. That's why it's going to be so difficult to correct this. It's not just one group that has to change. They all do. They all have to develop a sense of morality and know that when they're doing something wrong, that they're impacting millions of lives in a negative way. Not just today, but the future. Look at all the farms. Look at these 89 dairies. If they don't get picked up, what's going to happen to that, to those people and to those operations? It's a domino effect to communities, to the people that are operating those farms, and the families. And some of these families have probably been there for generations. So I hate to be so glum, but this is the way I see it. These are the facts, the way I perceive them, and I'm welcome to have anybody prove me wrong. But it's just very, very frustrating to see what has happened with all these different types of organic operations, the CAFOs and the hydroponics and the illegal grain that's coming in. And
let's talk about the grain for a minute.
Sure.
You've experienced it firsthand because you were selling real organic grain.
Yes.
And so tell us about that. Tell us about what's happening.
Well, that was part of our diversification. We didn't at the time want to expand. We didn't want to get milk more and more cows. We were happy with our 125 cow dairy. We were being paid a fair price, but we had land come up, and I had, at the time, all three of my sons were here, and we were selling organic grain to two different organic grain mills in New York, but they were both of them were 2 hours away, one in one direction, one in the other. And so all the organic dairies around here were buying grain from them. Not that we're going to compete and try to serve the whole state, but why don't we try to diversify in that operation and start, instead of trucking the grain 2 hours and then having it come back and, to these farms, let's just do it ourselves and keep it here. So we made the investment to put up grain storage and bought a grain dryer, bought a blower truck, and we started serving just, really local farms, no more than 30 or 40 miles away from us. And it was a very profitable thing for us. And yet we were still able to supply grain at a very competitive price and help those local farmers out too, because, we were local, we were reliable, and we had high quality grain. But then over the last 5 years as this illegal grain kept coming in more and more, and the price of milk kept dropping, we didn't even try to compete with the grain as the organic grain as the price drop. We just wished the farmers well, thanked them for their business while they were with us, and they have to do what they have to do. If it's got an organic certificate with it, they have to believe that it's organic. And I think in a lot of cases, it probably was. I think the two organic mills in New York are very reputable. They would never knowingly buy illegal grain that wasn't organic. But they were big enough that they had to compete to stay in business. That was their sole operation, basically. And they had a lot of farms that depended on them, and they did what they had to do to stay in business.
And what they had to do was drop the price.
Drop the price, yeah.
So even though they were selling real organic grain, they had to sell it at a price
but because their volumes were so large, it's just like 5,000 cow operation. You don't need as many dollars per cow to be viable as you do for a 50 cow dairy. And it's the same with grain. We only had 10 or 12 good big customers, where they had each probably had hundreds of customers, and we just couldn't get the margins that we needed to continue to compete with that lower and lower price.
So it's pretty clear to me why this is a terrible deal for farmers.
Yeah.
You've touched on, but could you repeat or explain a little more why this is also a terrible deal for eaters?
Well, as I said, we have a small retail store where we sell we have a processor, small, local, semi-local processor that comes and picks up our milk and makes a few varieties, like 15 or 18 varieties of cheese. Just a tiny percentage of our overall production. But we also have an organic beef herd, and we sell organic cuts of meat in this store and organic pork that we raise, and we have a local farm. Actually, the employee works for us and uses our land to grow organic chickens, and then, like I said, a lot of other things. And that business continues to grow for two reasons. With two types of customer. One is someone that's having serious health issues, and they start researching, well, why did I get cancer now? Why did I get it there? Or why do I have diverticulitis? Or why do I have rheumatoid arthritis or what, and they start realizing that conventional food is not meant to be healthy. It's meant to be stored, transported, and it's meant to be cheap. So we have people coming in looking for this high quality organic food that they know is pure, doesn't have any residues, doesn't have any hormones, doesn't have any chemical residues in it, or hormone residues or pesticides or anything. It's just pure food. The full cost of it is in the price. There's nothing where there's any additional costs that aren't reflected like there is with conventional food. And we also, the other type of customer we have is young parents that have just had children, and they want their children to have pure food without all the residues, just like somebody that's struggling with a health issue. So when you have milk or hydroponic vegetables or berries that aren't truly organic, they don't have the value that organic does, and these people aren't improving their health like they think they are. They see the USDA organic label and think, well, that's all I need to worry about. But nowadays it's not, because just because it has that label on it doesn't mean that it's truly organic. You've got to do some work to make sure that you're truly getting organic food.
Yeah. I see this situation where we have a bunch of farmers who want to grow organic food, and we actually have millions of people who want to buy real organic food.
Yeah.
And the problem is connecting.
Pretty soon it's not going to be available.
That's right. The farmers are going to be driven out of business.
Going to be gone. That's why it's so important for consumers to do research and not. I know everybody's in a hurry. Nobody likes to lollygag around a grocery store. You want to go in, you want to get what you want to come out. But there are ways, for example, your Real Organic Project and Cornucopia Institute Scorecard and other projects that are going on that can help people actually make decisions that make a difference.
Yeah.
That really do make sure they really are getting truly organic food.
Right.
Yeah.
You see the ricochets when one thing goes bad. So when you allow the fraudulent grain, the grain that was never organic in the first place, in with that USDA label, now that supports the CAFOs.
Yes.
That are now getting cheap grain, and grain as their main cost, right?
Yes.
Aside from the vets.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what I mean. Everything's tied together like that. It's not just one person or one group that has to change. It's the whole process. It's been allowed to deteriorate beyond belief. Like I said, I was so naive, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and when I was getting tired of organic certifiers not recognizing each other, and I just had no idea what a lot of the old timers did realize. I didn't. I just thought organic could rise above it, and we would be the shining star in the National Organic or the USDA, and there would be a real true difference in organic products that were on the shelves, and as opposed to the conventional products.
Do you think, Kevin, if the USDA did its job and enforced the law and passed the rules that were recommended, like prohibiting hydroponics and origin of livestock that were recommended by the National Organic Standards Board, and if they enforced the pasture rule, do you think that would change the situation dramatically?
Yes, I do. But again, it's not just them. It's the certifiers themselves. They're technically accrediting the certifiers. So that's where we really need to start, is the certifiers. For example, Aurora would never be certified in New York or Vermont or New Hampshire or Pennsylvania. None of those certifiers that work in those areas, whether it's NOFA or PCO or Maine Organic Gardeners, none of them would ever certify that operation. So that's the real place where it has to start. If you're going to have people with no morals that are going to try to break the law, the first line of defense is the certifiers. And then if they don't do their job, then it's up to the National Organic Program. But I'm not sure that's ever going to happen because of the corruption in Washington.
Yeah.
it's sad to say that, but I from what I've seen, I don't know, unless some of these operations, these hydroponic operations or these CAFOs, all of a sudden have an epiphany or something and realize, wait, there's more to life than money. You know, I'm damaging a lot of people in a lot of different ways, not just family farms or farms that are abiding by the rule, but consumers and children and babies, you know, that aren't getting what they think they are with these products.
Yeah. I don't think that those people believe that organic is better. So
I think that's it. They worship money, and that's it. Money and power. And to them, the ends justify the means. Doesn't matter what they do as long as they get what they want, and they're not being held to account. They're getting away with doing that. And it's, you know, if we could at the very least get labels that reflect how these products were produced, instead of these store-bought or store brands having a picture of a small red dairy barn on their labels, or a single chicken in front of a dairy barn or an old style barn. Put pictures of these CAFOs on their labels. This is where this milk was produced. You know, in this 5,000 cow operation that there's no way that they can graze, or in this layer operation with 80,000 birds in a building. You know, that's also part of the problem. Not only are they illegal, they're deceptive in their advertising, and they're telling people what they're buying. You know?
Yeah.
If you could at least get that done, then, I mean, maybe there are some people that simply don't care. They think organic, even if it's not the way it should be, it's still better than conventional, even though a lot of them aren't. Maybe that's all they care about. I don't know. But at least there would be people, at least people would have the opportunity to make that choice. You know, how do you make all this happen? You can tell me that, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I've thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And how do you make people have a conscience? I don't know. You know, you can't, it's hard to legislate that. We already have everything in place that we need. We don't really need another origin of livestock rule. We didn't really need another pasture rule. We don't really need anything about hydroponics. It's already stated. All those things are already stated in the National Rule and the Organic Food Production Act. Organic involves the soil and improving it, and it involves pasture for ruminants, and it involves outdoor access for other animals. It's already there, you know, and it's just being ignored. It's being allowed to, the law is being allowed to be broken, you know, and all these people that are doing it, they're in this little circle patting each other on the back about how great things are and what they've accomplished, and it's all fraud.
Yeah. Could we talk a little bit more about Danone Horizon? When did you hear about that? What was your first reaction?
I'd like to say I was surprised. I just heard about it when everybody else did, with the releases from NADPA, or I think it was through NADPA, an email that was sent out by Ed Maltby, I think is where I first saw it. And I'd like to say I'm surprised, but I wasn't. As long as these you know, the Aurora just built another processing plant last year, the year before, in Missouri, and that they're just going to keep. This is just going to keep happening, and you know, everybody thinks it's the same old cliche. Well, it's not going to happen to me. It's just, well, yes, it is, because the price is going to keep going down and down and down, and unless you're going to milk 10,000 or 15,000 cows and not truly be organic, you're going to be in this. You're going to be in the same position. You're going to lose your market, or you're not going to be able to survive. So, I think it can happen, but it probably is going to take small regional operations. For example, if these of the 89 farms, if they're all close enough together that they don't get picked up, maybe someone can finance a small plant for them. And then once their story becomes known, there'll be a demand for it. People that were buying Walmart or Costco or Sam's Club organic milk will buy that milk because it's going to taste better, it's going to be more nutritious, and they're going to know where it came from. You know, that's the only other option I see. And as far as hydroponics, I don't know. Again, it comes back to labeling to me. You know, you've got a true product that's made out of soil. I can tell a hydroponic grown berry or tomato the instant I bite into it, because it just doesn't have the texture, the taste, the mouthfeel that organic products do. Yeah, it really does. I'll bet 99 times out of 100 I could get that right. You know, there might be an occasional one that fools me, but not very often. And there again, maybe there's people that don't care. Maybe they're going to use these tomatoes or these in some type of a product, whether it's tomato sauce or pizza sauce, and they'll spice it up with, you know, it'll be cooked, they'll fill it with flavorings, and they'll overcome the cardboard and the hard texture that makes it taste just like conventional grown tomatoes or whatever. So, but again, at least label it. Let people know how it was grown. You know, if you're going to cheat, if you're going to break the rules, tell people. This tomato was called organic, but it was actually grown hydroponically.
Yeah.
It's not going to have the nutrition, it's not going to have the flavor, it's not going to have the taste, but man, it'll sit on a shelf for as long as you want it to.
That's right. Some rugged tomatoes.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you think, so I'm sure Horizon would say, Danone would say, it's not our fault, the price of milk is low, the costs are going up, just as you said, the costs are going up for you at this farm.
Sure.
And we can't afford to buy milk from these farmers anymore because of the long trucking route.
See, but that's a lie. They could afford to. They're not losing money. They're just not making as much as they want to. And they also didn't give the farmers any opportunity to help cover a little bit of the cost of the trucking. I mean, if you're getting $30 a hundred for your milk, and instead you could get $29.95 and put 5 cents toward trucking, as opposed to getting $18 a hundred for it conventionally, what would you rather do? Of course you'd rather help. But again, they shouldn't even have to. Danone and Horizon, make your books public. Let me see how, and people will see they're not losing money. They just have how much they think they should be making. And, well, hey, we can make more if we do this. You know, they're, what do they call it, a Class B?
Oh, they're a B Corp.
A B Corp.
Right, benefit.
Well, what a farce. You know, how are you a B Corp and do something like that? And let's see where your other, when all these farms are gone, tell us where the milk is coming from. Every single other operation. Where are they coming from? I'll bet there are no family farms. There are no 50-cow dairies anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
They won't tell us that.
Oh, that's right. They won't. Because they know what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
If they had a conscience, if they had some morals, they wouldn't be doing it in the first place. And like I said, everybody wants to blame corporations. They're evil. Well, they're still made up of people. You know, people still are making these decisions. The corporation isn't anything behind a curtain. That's, you know, it's people that are making these decisions, and they know what they're doing. You know, you can't, there's no way to sugarcoat that.
It's an interesting thing. So one of the things I've been kind of fascinated about with Danone, the person who led them to be a B Corp is a man named Emmanuel Faber.
Okay.
French guy. And I think he meant it. I think he actually believed that Danone could become a positive force.
Uh-huh.
He thought in the end it would be good for business too. Yeah. He said that. He said, we're going to attract better people. We're going to attract customers who care. And of course, he was fired I think in January because profits were down a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. And there was a shareholder revolt.
Yeah.
led by a couple aggressive people, and that was the only thing they cared about.
Right.
Was that bottom line.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's, I mean, I know that those facts are true, but I don't know what Faber's motivations were. But it's interesting to me to see that, as one friend of mine said over the change of leadership at a company, it's like, oh, we're losing money, fire the hippies. And it was, that when it comes down to it,
Yeah.
a corporation is almost ruled by money instead of by people.
Yeah.
As Fred Kirschman famously said, when somebody asked him, well, what would you do if you were Secretary of Agriculture? And he said, well, that all depends on how long I wanted to stay Secretary of Agriculture.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that people, all the corporations are run by people, and yet if somebody in that position steps too out of line, they suddenly aren't in the picture anymore.
Yeah. No, it's almost, again, it's like a herd mentality. When you get so many people, then their motives change. Their motives change. So I remember when Danone bought Horizon, everyone said, well, wait and see what happens. And the end result is not going to be good for family farms. And they're right. That's why why I wasn't surprised. I think unfortunately, I think there's more to come, because the competition. If Danone, if they do this and then they lower their product price, what's Stonyfield going to do? They're going to take some of these farms, but how are they going to compete? How are all the other yogurt makers going to compete? We have a co-op in New York that's trying to, upstate Niagara. They're a small, local, regional co-op. And I'm sure their managers now are, uh-oh, how's this going to impact us and our farmers? Are they going to force us to lower our pay price because they make yogurt? So
somehow we have to get to the eater to say, I will pay more.
That's right.
For good food.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We've got to get on the labels that this is truly organic, and no, this was made by a CAFO, or this was grown hydroponically.
Yeah.
We've got to be honest with consumers, and they're not being honest with them.
Yeah. Well, you have the next generation running your family farm now. Was this farmed by your parents?
My parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and my great-great-grandparents. Yeah. Now, no. We started out in Conklin, south of Binghamton, in 1848.
Yeah.
And then development in that area we ended up here in Nichols in 1911. My great-grandfather and grandfather. So,
what are your hopes for your sons who are running this now?
Well, my one son has a son who's 5, and my youngest son has a boy that's going to be born in December. They would be the 7th generation. And I don't know. I don't know what they're going to be faced with, the way things are going right now. I've told them that I think they need to consider selling off 200, 225, 250 head and using that to buy processing equipment. They don't want to. They want to continue the way they are, but I said, you better keep it in the back of your mind, because it might be the only way the farm is going to be handed down to the next generation unless something changes with the price of milk. Because everything just, it's going up, and the price of milk is steady or down. And so, we have that where our store is the old Borden's Creamery. It was built in 1890. And someday it may be bottling local milk again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I wish I was more optimistic, but I've learned too much. I've seen too much. I was too naive, and I don't know anymore. I would never discourage anybody from farming organically. From my experience and from my career, that's the only way. If I couldn't farm organically, I wouldn't farm. Conventional agriculture is just too destructive, too many hidden costs, whether it's chemicals leaching down into the water table or residues in food that people weren't really meant to digest or whatever. But and again, I hate to sound so pessimistic, but man, we're just being beat over the head nonstop the last few years, and this 89 dairies being dropped is not a good omen for the future, in my opinion. Because like I said, they're doing it to so they make more profit and probably lower their price. So I don't know what's going to happen. Like I'm very hopeful that Organic Valley will be able to weather the storm, but it's going to take more aggressive marketing from them to make people keep buying Organic Valley milk. And the same with upstate Niagara. You know, their milk and dairy products are marketed through Wegmans. Have you heard of Wegmans grocery store?
I sell to Wegmans.
They are a huge partner with a lot of organic farms in upstate, grain farms and dairies. And so if you buy Wegmans organic milk, it came from true organic. That's probably the only store brand that I know of that is actually organic milk, because it's coming from upstate Niagara. And they try to teach their farmers well, just like Crop does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah, we're a partner farm with them too.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, they're great. They're an independent chain and still run by the family.
I hope they stay that way.
I know.
That's the problem.
I know.
You know?
I know. I know what happens. Yeah, it's hard. Every time I turn around, a customer got bought by a Dutch multinational. Yeah. I go, how did that happen? Yeah.
So yeah, I have to be hopeful, but I'm concerned, I guess is the best way to put it, because of all that has happened, the way things seem to be going.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Do you think that the Real Organic Project is the right idea? Is it the best we can come up with?
I do. That's a way to educate people. What it really would take is a major brand to put that on their label instead of the USDA cert label. That would wake people up. And that may not necessarily be a food product. Maybe it's something like Dr. Bonner's, you know what I mean? Or something.
Yeah,
some national product. I was always hopeful that would go that way with Cornucopia Institute, but they don't want to get into that. They just want to be informed. They don't want to get into any type of certification like that. But I think that's what it's going to take. I think it's going to take a label where people walk in and see that and realize that the USDA label is a bottom standard, and a very bottom standard. And the Real Organic Project label is truly organic and worth the price to have that label. So
yeah.
And there's one that the Rodale Institute, Jeff Moyer's working on too.
Yeah, they have a Rodale label.
Do they have a Rodale label?
I don't quite understand it, because they're also part of the regenerative organic certification.
Yes. So yeah, I don't know all that either.
You know, they've got two labels.
I haven't talked with Jeff in quite a while, so
yeah.
I don't know exactly what's going on there. But yeah, I think that's one of the only hopes we have.
Yeah.
Again, unless some of these people have an epiphany and say, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What am I doing here? This is wrong. I can't be like this. But I'm not holding my breath for that.
No, I'm not holding my breath. But it's true that we don't know what will happen. You know, we've seen such dramatic changes in the age of COVID.
Yes.
On people's shopping habits, on everything.
Yeah.
That it makes you realize how quickly change can come.
Right. Yeah. We got to be hopeful.
Yeah.
Got to keep working. Yeah.
All right. Kevin Engelbert, thank you very much for talking with me today.
Thank you for valuing my opinion. I'm humbled by it.
Thank you for listening to the Real Organic Podcast. We hope that you will subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a rating and review. A video version of this interview, as well as the full transcript with links related to our conversation, can be found at realorganicproject.org/episode 57. Please join us next time when our guests are organic farming legend Elliot Coleman and renowned chef Dan Barber. To find a Real Organic farm near you, visit realorganicproject.org/farms. See you next time.